All right, so let's jump into this deep dive. We're tackling the age-old question today. Should you have kids?
Hmm.
We've got this personal reflection that really digs into that question.
Okay.
And it brings up a lot of thought-provoking points.
Yeah.
But, I want to say right off the bat, this is just one person's perspective, not some universal answer.
Right. Right.
But one thing that really stood out to me was this whole idea of like a perfectionism trap when it comes to feeling ready to have kids.
Oh, yeah. That's a big one. You always hear that. Like, you need to have everything perfectly figured out before you even think about it.
Yeah. And that's exactly what this reflection's kind of pushing back on, right? It's
Yeah.
like you're trying to plan out every single step of this huge mountain climb before you even leave base camp.
Yeah, exactly. And the reflection is saying that kind of thinking can actually keep you from ever even starting the climb.
So true.
And, I think this is especially interesting for someone like you, always wanting to learn and be prepared and do things right.
Oh, you know me too well.
But sometimes that desire for perfection can turn into you just researching and planning forever and never actually taking action.
So then what's the alternative? Just throw caution to the wind and just jump right in.
Not necessarily. It's about finding a good balance. This reflection really emphasizes that balance between being prepared, but also being adaptable.
Okay, I like that.
Like, you want to have the essential skills packed and ready, but also know that you're going to learn and adapt as you go.
So it's not about having a perfect plan, but it's about having a good plan.
Yeah, exactly. It's like having a compass, but also knowing how to read the stars just in case.
Okay, I like that analogy. So how does this person suggest we strike that balance?
Well, they bring up a concept that I think you'll really appreciate. It's the 80-20 rule applied to parenting prep.
Ooh, I love the 80-20 rule.
Yeah. So the idea is focus on the 20% of skills or goals that are really going to give you 80% of the results in creating a good life for a kid.
Right, so what makes the cut for that 20%? We all know changing diapers probably isn't on the list.
Well, the reflection really highlights some key areas, like building a strong relationship with yourself and your partner, having some financial stability, nailing those communication skills, and having a framework for discipline.
Okay, that makes sense. You can't build a house if you skip the foundation, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's all about that solid foundation.
But I do want to push back a little bit here. Isn't there a risk of oversimplifying things if we only focus on that 20%? What about all the other stuff we worry about, like knowing the latest child development theories or having that picture-perfect nursery?
That's a good point.
Mm.
But I don't think this reflection is saying those things aren't important at all. It's more about priorities.
Okay, I see what you mean.
Thinking about what truly matters most.
Yeah.
And again, going back to that, it's about equipping yourself for the journey, not striving for some impossible standard of perfection.
So it's more about focusing on those core skills that'll help you through the challenges and be ready for anything.
Exactly.
Like, you don't need to be a master chef to feed your kids healthy food,
Right.
but you do need to know the basics of cooking.
And be open to learning new things along the way.
Exactly. Now, there's this other part of the reflection that I thought was super interesting. It's about how quick we are to judge other parents' choices. All that mom-shaming stuff.
Yeah, that's tough.
And this reflection uses a really clever analogy to talk about that. It's like those armchair quarterbacks, critiquing every play from their couch.
Oh, yeah, the ones who think they know everything.
Yeah, it's so easy to judge when you're on the sidelines, but actually getting out there and playing the game is a whole different story.
It really is. And this reflection is challenging us to shift, go from that judgmental mindset to a learning mindset.
Ooh, I like that.
Ask yourself, like, what can I learn from this?
Yeah.
How can I use this experience to make my own approach better?
So instead of just thinking, I'd never let my kid act like that, we'd try to see the situation with a little more empathy.
Yeah.
Because let's be real, we've all been there, right?
Totally. We often judge without knowing the whole story.
Exactly. We're all on this journey together, even if our paths look a little different.
And, that actually leads to another big concept that this person explores, which is finding that balance between internal and external validation.
So it's not just about how prepared you feel, but also listening to the people who know you well.
Right. The author talks about how they felt ready based on what they thought, but also what their friends and family were telling them.
It's like getting feedback from all sides before you do something big.
Exactly. You're getting a full picture of your strengths and also maybe where you need to grow a little.
And now, for what I think is the most interesting part of this whole reflection, the mountain climbing metaphor.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
They compare parenthood to climbing a mountain, which I think is so true.
It's not just about reaching the top, like raising the perfect kid, but it's about navigating the whole climb itself.
Exactly. The journey is just as important as the destination, which I think takes some pressure off, honestly.
I agree. You don't have to be that mythical perfect parent.
You just have to keep moving forward. And it also highlights how important it is to be resilient, adaptable, and even enjoy the process, even when it's hard.
Because no mountain climb is easy, right?
Exactly. And that's why having a strong relationship, that solid base camp we talked about, is so important.
You need that support to get through those tough climbs.
And those skills, communication, discipline, all that, they're your tools to navigate the climb.
You got to pack the right gear for this expedition.
Right.
But before we get too lost in our mountain climbing metaphor, I think we should stop here.
Yeah, good idea.
And next time, we'll come back and really dig into what it means to pack the right gear for this wild, messy, but ultimately really rewarding journey of parenthood.
You know what I think is so powerful about this whole mountain climbing analogy?
What's that?
It's that it just acknowledges, straight up, that parenthood is hard. It doesn't try to, sugarcoat it.
Yeah.
But it also frames those challenges as, opportunities.
Oh, interesting.
Opportunities for you to grow and for your child to grow.
So instead of being scared of all the tough stuff, we should look at it as part of the journey.
Yeah, exactly.
Like those really intense workouts. They push you to your limit, but you come out feeling stronger.
Yes. And it goes back to that whole adaptability thing we talked about.
Oh, right.
Because you can plan all you want, but there are always going to be surprises. Like imagine you're climbing a mountain, right? You have your route all planned out,
Yeah.
and then boom, a storm hits and you got to change course.
So it's not just about the plan, but about being able to switch things up when you need to?
Exactly. And that's where I think this whole idea of self-awareness comes in.
Okay.
The author of this reflection, they talk about how important it is to know yourself.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Know your strengths, but also know your weaknesses.
Right.
The things that set you off, how you handle stress. Because the better you know yourself, the better you can handle all the challenges of, being a parent.
It's like knowing your limits when you're climbing. If you know you get altitude sickness, you're going to be extra careful and pack for that.
Right.
So thinking about packing the right gear, what are some things this reflection talks about that are important for this whole parenting journey?
Well, on top of the stuff we already talked about,
Mm.
like communication and discipline,
Yeah.
the reflection also says patience is super important, and empathy, and a sense of humor.
Oh, for sure. Because there are going to be days when you're exhausted and frustrated and you're just like, what am I doing?
Totally.
And in those moments, you just got to be able to laugh at it all.
Yeah.
Remember that it's just a phase.
Can be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
You're not going to get it right every time, and that's okay.
You're learning along with your kid.
Exactly.
It's a good reminder that no parent is perfect. But let me play devil's advocate for a second. If someone's listening to this and they're still on the fence about kids and they're hearing all this about challenges and skills and all that, wouldn't that make them more anxious?
I can see that.
Yeah.
But I don't think this reflection is trying to scare people away from having kids. It's more about having an honest conversation.
Yeah, good point.
Because so much of what we hear about being a parent, it's all sunshine and rainbows,
Yeah, until you're up at 3 a.m. with a crying baby and a pile of laundry.
Exactly. I think by being real about the tough stuff, we can actually make things better for parents. Less judgment, more support.
Because when you know you're not the only one struggling, it makes it easier,
Yeah. Exactly. And that's why we always want our listeners to talk to each other, share their experiences.
Sometimes just hearing someone else's story can make a huge difference.
Totally.
So to everyone out there trying to decide about kids, remember, you don't need to have it all figured out beforehand.
Right. There's no magic formula.
But if you focus on those core skills and look at those challenges as opportunities to grow
Yeah.
and build a good support system around you.
You're setting yourself up for a journey that's going to be meaningful.
And if you start to doubt yourself, remember, you're not alone.
There are so many resources and communities out there.
Think of them like experienced mountain climbers who are there to help you along the way.
Exactly. Yeah. And as you keep thinking about this whole to kid or not to kid question,
Yeah.
remember that the journey itself is where you grow. It's where you find out how strong you are, how much love you have, and how you can adapt to anything life throws at you.
So embrace the challenge, trust your gut, and know that you've got this, whatever path you choose. Now, remember that powerful mountain climbing analogy we've been talking about. If parenthood really is like climbing a mountain, what would you pack? What are your essential supplies?
Ooh, that's a great question.
What skills, what values, what support systems would make you feel ready for that journey?
I think it really depends on the person.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's about figuring out what you need.
Right. So for some people, maybe it's all about confidence, like knowing they can handle anything.
Yeah, that inner strength.
But for someone else, maybe it's having a really strong partner, someone to share everything with.
Someone to lean on.
Exactly. Or maybe it's a big network of family and friends, people they can go to for advice or just to vent.
Having that community is so important.
And hey, maybe for some people, it's just a good sense of humor because you got to be able to laugh at the crazy stuff.
Totally. And this isn't like a one-time packing list. You got to keep checking your supplies as you go.
Oh, I like that.
See what's working, what you need more of.
Like checking your gear at base camp before you climb higher.
Exactly.
And I think that's so important for people to hear, especially if they're still figuring out if they want kids. You don't need to have everything perfect before you even start.
It's more about knowing what's important to you.
Building that strong foundation. And if you're ever unsure, remember, there's help out there.
Yeah, so many people have been through this.
Think of them as your guides, helping you along the way.
Exactly. And as you think about all this, to kid or not to kid,
Hmm.
remember that the journey itself is where you grow. It's where
Yeah.
you find out how strong you are, how much you can love.
And how to handle anything that comes your way.
Exactly.
So embrace the climb. Trust yourself. You've got this no matter what path you choose. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into parenthood. What a big question.
It is. And until next time, keep exploring and keep those essential supplies packed and ready.